those that have not had the pleasure of attending our meetings before, a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, if you would silence your cell phones, we'd greatly appreciate that. Second of all, the way things work here is after we do call the roll and approve the minutes from the last meeting, city staff will present on an item. After that, they open it up just to the commission for technical questions. Once we're done with technical questions, it's opened up to the public for comment or question. If you have anything to say, please step up to the microphone over there and state your name and address so we have it for the minutes. After public comment is closed, you come back to the commission for discussion and a vote, and then we just move on through the agenda that way. And with that, let's call the roll.
Kathleen Propp.
Here.
Ed Bowen. Steve Cummings.
Here.
Michael Ford. John Hintz.
Present.
John Kiefer.
Here.
Robert Weibart. Thomas Perry.
Here.
Andrew Mott.
Here.
Derek Grove. Thomas Boyce.
Here. Next item, approval of the minutes from the December 4th meeting. Do we have anything to add, correct, or anything like that from those minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion clearly passes. On to item number 1, extraterritorial 4-lot land division and certified survey map at Nichols Drive and County Highway S in the town of Oshkosh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
So this one should be pretty straightforward. As was mentioned, this is the acceptance of a 4-lot land division and CSM. We'll go into the subject site here. You can see it in blue there. So it's north of town here, northwest a little bit. Lake Butamore just to the south there. There's a number of properties you can see there along the south that are residential. It's county zoning there, so R2 suburban residential district. The vacant lots right there, or vacant lot I should say, that's we're looking to subdivide. That one is currently also R2 suburban residential district. The 2040 land use recommendation is single-family residential. Here is the CSM. I don't think you can see it too well, but there was a note on there that there would be no access from County Highway S. All of the access would be from Nichols Drive there. Nichols Avenue, or Nichols Drive should be listed on there instead of Nichols Avenue. I think that's just a minor thing they can change. But as you can see, there'd be 4 lots for single-family residential there, which is consistent with our 2040 land use recommendation. City staff did not see any issues with this proposed CSM. One little thing to note is a drainage swale, I believe, between lots 2 and 3. That's the only thing that they really mentioned on their application. Other than that, we didn't see anything to worry about with this one. So we recommend approval of the 4-lot land division CSM at Nichols Drive and County Highway S.
Thank you, sir. Any technical questions for the city?
Why the irregular shape of the lots?
Trying to think. I am not 100% sure. Jeff, do you know anything about why the irregular shape? Why they chose that?
No, the surveyor didn't mention anything about why the configuration was chosen the way it was.
So if you look at the aerial photo, one of those lines is going along the tree line.
Oh,
The drainage area between 2 and 3.
Yep.
There is no navigable waterway in there, so even though it looks like there's a swale running along there, but it's not, hasn't been identified as a navigable waterway by the DNR.
Yeah.
Any other technical questions? Seeing none, anybody from the audience who'd like to speak to this matter today, please step up to the mic and tell us what you think. Going once. Twice. Okay, back to the commission.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All right, then call the roll.
Perry.
Aye.
Mott.
Aye.
Propp.
Aye.
Bowen.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Hintz.
Aye.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Boyce.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
On to item number 2, public hearing, official mapping for widening of North Keller Street, right-of-way north of Oshkosh Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a official mapping request for North Kohler Street, north of Oshkosh Avenue. They're looking to widen North Kohler Street on both the east and west sides. On the west side, we have an oil change garage and car wash that is no longer in use, and on the east side is a vacant parcel. Along Oshkosh Avenue, we have a mix of commercial and residential uses, and then to the north, we have Lakeshore Park and the currently being developed Oshkosh Corporation headquarters. As part of the planning for the Oshkosh Corp headquarters, there was a traffic impact analysis conducted, and as part of that, there's a recommendation that North Kohler Street, north of Oshkosh Avenue, be widened to accommodate additional traffic volume coming from the Oshkosh Core site. Specifically, they recommended a dedicated turn lane for traffic coming south towards the roundabout and heading west, as most of the employees for the headquarters will be coming from the west. So that will improve traffic leaving the site and heading west. The right-of-way will be expanded on both sides by about 10 feet. And the comprehensive plan recommends a subject site suitable for commercial development, and staff is in the opinion that the proposed mapping action is consistent with the plan's recommendation, as it will provide for improved traffic flow for future commercial uses in the area. And here's the map document that shows, again, on both the west and east sides will be expanded by 10 feet. And planning staff recommends approval of the official map action as requested.
All right, thank you. Technical questions from the commission?
Just as a quick point, we did meet with the property owner on the west side of the street
Okay, thank you.
to let them know what's going on, and we talked about the project.
All right, thank you. Okay, anybody here from the public to speak to this item today? Doesn't look like it. Back to the commission.
Move for approval?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All right, call the roll, Nina.
Perry?
Aye.
Mott?
Aye.
Crop?
Aye.
Bowen?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Hintz?
Aye.
Kiefer? Wojtek?
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Item number 3, final plat, 4th edition to Casey's Meadows South.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure thing, Joe.
Chet Wiesenberg of Casey's Meadow LLC is requesting approval of a final plat containing 38 single-family lots and right-of-way, identified as the 4th edition at Casey's Meadow South. Up on the screen, I have an existing land use and zoning map of where the subject site is. The subject site is about 11 and a half acres in size, and it's zoned single-family residence district 5, SR 5. Back in 2005, a 105 lot development and final plat containing 20 lots was approved. And over the past decade, there were three additions to Casey's Meadows South, 12 lots in 2008, another 24 lots in 2012, and the third addition in 2017 containing 20 lots. The plat's generally located north of Sawyer Creek and West 20th Avenue, east of Clearville Road and south of 9th Avenue. And the plat involves the extension of a couple streets, Mockingbird Way and Casey's Trail and Wyatt Way, and does create a new street called Sage Crossing, with lots to be located on both sides. We'll go next slide here. There's just an aerial photo of development from 2015. And this is just a shot of the overall plat area identified in green, and it's just a little close-up. Here's those street extensions they're proposing, extension of Mockingbird Way. And down over here, this is Wyatt's Way, which will see an extension, and then Casey's Trail down here, and then a new street called Sage Crossing right there. The name Sage Crossing has been reviewed by city staff and the county highway department, and the name has been approved, no issues. The city's comprehensive land use plan 2040 identifies this areas appropriate for low-density residential, so this plat is consistent with that recommendation. Also on the plat, the developer will be dedicating 3 temporary cul-de-sac easements, one for Mockingbird Way one for Wyatt Way, and then the last one for Casey's Trail. This is to allow for easier turnaround for city trucks and emergency equipment and other large vehicles. As the subdivision continues developing to the west, the easements will be released as they will no longer be required. A terrace tree plan has been submitted. Jump over here. And is currently under review by the Public Works Department, Forestry and Electric Divisions, and they'll just confirm that it meets subdivision regulations and does not have any conflicts with any city infrastructure. Parkland dedication, the developer has chosen to pay parkland dedication fees in lieu of land dedication. The land dedication would have totaled 41,800 square feet. Instead, the developer is choosing to pay the parkland dedication fee of $200 per lot at plat acceptance, and then an additional $200 per lot at building permit issuance. The Parks Department reviewed the plat, and based on the Sawyer Creek Master Plan, the plan recommends a pedestrian connection to Rouge Park over in the vicinity of lots 77 through 82. Staff is recommending, go to this slide right here. I'm sorry. Staff is recommending that a municipal access easement between lots 79 and 80, which is down here, and then between lots 85 and 86 and 91 and 92, which is up here. Staff's recommending that a pedestrian access easement be granted to the city for construction of pedestrian trails running through that easement. The one connecting directly or eventually connecting to Sawyer or Rouge Park, we're recommending a 10-foot wide pedestrian trail, asphalt, 3-inch asphalt over 8-inch base. And then the one between Casey's Trail and Wyatt Way would be more of a pedestrian access trail, which would be 5 feet wide, which would consist of a 3-inch asphalt over 8-inch base centered on the easement. A couple of minor items that need to be addressed, and this has been conveyed to the developer and surveyor, or the consultant. All the easement notes on the plat need to be updated, just some minor wording changes for the public utility easements versus municipal utility easements. Down on this map, you can see down in here, this is going to be, the plat's going to create a little orphan parcel sliver. Technically, it would be creating an illegal sized lot, so staff is recommending that either, first of all, this little area needs to be incorporated into the final plat, and that little area either needs to be combined with the adjoining parcels, lots 81 and 80, or that area should be designated as an outlot. Last item of concern, the ownership of the base parent parcels. Let me go back to this one. There are two ownerships involved underlying the final plat. These lots over here are owned by Casey's Meadow LLC, and this long narrow one here and this parcel up here is owned by Thomas and Rouge. So before the city can accept the final plat, the ownerships of all the underlying lands have to be under one consistent ownership. The Department of Public Works reviewed the final plat and does not have any concerns with the general parcel configuration. They did note that the backs of lots, let me go back to this one here. I'm jumping around here. The backs of lots 85 and 86 and 91 and 92, there's a slight little jog, approximately 4 or 5 feet in wide. Public Works is recommending that instead of having a jog there, the plat should be modified so that there's just one common property corner. That would, reason being, it would make the pedestrian trail easier to construct, so you wouldn't have to fight that little shift in the backs of the lots there. The Department of Public Works and City Attorney is currently working with the developer to enter into a developer's agreement. This will be a seventh condition added to the recommendations at the end of this report. The Oshkosh Fire and Police Departments and the Oshkosh Area School District have been notified of this request and did not express any concerns with being able to serve the additional housing units. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the fourth addition at Casey's Meadow South with the following conditions. Once the orphan parcel that I mentioned shall be included with the plat and incorporated into the adjoining lots or turned into an outlot. All the easement revisions that I mentioned need to be corrected on the final plat. The ownership of the underlying parcels shall be changed into one common ownership. Modify the municipal access easements between lots 79 and 80 and 85 and 86, and also lots 91 and 92 to include pedestrian access. And then modify the backs of lots 85 and 86 and 91 and 92 to have one common property corner to adjust the affected easements accordingly. The developers to install a 10-foot wide pedestrian trail centered on the easement between lots 79 and 80, and then a 5-foot wide pedestrian trail centered on the easement located between lots 85 and 86, and then lots 91 and 92 at the time of public improvement construction. And then the seventh one that we're adding is the city and developers shall enter into a developer's agreement for construction of public facilities.
Along with the final subdivision plat at council.
Yeah.
So basically what we're asking and we're saying is we need the development agreement to go at the same time as the subdivision plat.
All right, thank you. Is that it?
Yep.
Technical questions? Kathy?
Yeah, condition 6, why is the part of the trail 10 feet wide and the other part 5 feet wide?
This section right here is just more or less a little pedestrian connection leading from the subdivision down south. And then this is going to be more formally part of the Sawyer Creek Trail System, which is generally 10 feet wide. So,
Yeah, and these aren't really trails per se because they're not designated trails. These are paths to connect to an official trail system.
Okay, thank you.
Other technical questions? John?
On the same note, with the fact that those are kind of offset to it, is there gonna be lining in the roadway is like kind of a
Crosswalk?
crosswalk there to connect the two, or?
Likely not because this won't be a high volume street. Sure.
We have been working with the developer on that. We will not put the angled crosswalk in, but the crosswalk will be perpendicular, and we're lining up with one of the crosswalks, so someone will have to come out of the sidewalk, out of the neighborhood, walk a few feet down the sidewalk parallel to the street, and then it'll be a perpendicular crossing, so it's the shortest distance.
Okay.
Thank you. Other technical questions? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, Mr. Wiesenberg. Over there is good.
Steve reversed it.
Chet Wiesenberg, 240 Algoma Boulevard. I'm here to answer any questions you have. And then one request would be that you would modify item 6. My reasoning is that back in 2004 and 2005, when we were originally laying out the subdivision and the pedestrian walk, we agreed with the need to provide an easement there for a future walk, with the thought for two things, is that Sage Crossing would eventually connect up to future residential development to the north, and there would be more pedestrians coming from the north to go down to utilize the trail to Rouge Park. And also that Rouge Park would eventually be developed. But right now, the agreement was that the city would pay for it. We'd provide an easement and the city would pay for it. And to me, it just doesn't seem prudent for us to, as developers, to install a trail now that likely won't be used for quite some time. Not sure when Rouge Park will ever be developed.
So what are you asking for?
I'm asking to leave the plat as is, but strike the condition that the developer
Just
install
eliminate
the
6?
path.
Okay.
Yeah.
What-
That's what it is.
for the stuff on the south side to connect to the park? Is that you're requesting?
Yeah, well, all of it. Can you pull that?
So this,
Yes,
you're requesting to pull that as well?
yes, please.
Any other thoughts to share?
Nope, that's it. Everything else we understand.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Wiesman? Go ahead, Ed.
I wasn't sure, just to clarify, are you requesting, so you're saying that the plat can remain as is, which shows these two trails,
Correct.
whatever we're gonna call them.
Mm-hmm.
What you're asking for is not to have them installed right away, or for some other party to install them at some point in the future when the park develops?
I think this item 6 requires that the developer install them.
It says, yeah, developer to install.
Yeah. And what I'm saying, Ed, is that the original agreement was that the city would install them when and if needed.
So that sounds like a development agreement item.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the plat is what the plat is. As long as they're shown here, it's provided for in some form or fashion. It can't be developed as something else. And it sounds like you guys can hash out
Figure
whatever
it
you
out.
guys have to hash out. Does that sound fair, Darren? I mean,
Yeah,
not fair. Does that sound accurate? Does it sound accurate? I'm not gonna get into fairness here.
Easements will still be in place.
Yeah, well, the easements will still be in place.
Right.
Um,
So,
I don't know if this is any different than installing a sidewalk versus installing a road bed versus installing what have you in the subdivision, unless it's not covered by the subdivision regs, and I can't think of that right now. Steve, you have any comments on it? No? So you might be correct. It is a development agreement issue.
I guess that's kind of where I'm going with it, is as long as we're showing these areas that are the items that are pertinent for this body in terms of ensuring pedestrian connectivity to the parks, ensuring that everything is planned correctly, I think we've kind of done our job.
Right.
And we don't typically get into who's paying for things, who's installing things, unless unless maybe Steve's got other commentary, I don't know.
I just want to make sure a clarification, just so we're that everything is graded such that the surface just is what's being left off, not that we're changing the grading in that area for the time being, but it's just that the hard surface is not being placed.
Say that again.
Wouldn't that be site plan
That's
review?
what Chet is
though?
asking.
And that's just why I just want to make sure that we're not eliminating
The
the
grade.
trails are built up higher than the surrounding area so that they don't have water running on them. I just want to make sure that they're still graded appropriately and up to that elevation, so we don't have to disturb people's landscaping, their drainage pattern that gets developed as these homes are built. So that basically the set to the proper elevation grade and graded to look like there's a trail there, there's just not the concrete or asphalt surface on the top.
Right, but wouldn't that
There'll be a
be
development
site plan
agreement
review? I mean, wouldn't that be development agreement, then site plan review committee determining, yes, these elevations are, I mean, we don't,
Why do we do
we're
that?
not getting into elevations on the plat.
It's just a matter of what your definition of install is.
Okay, and I think that's what it sounds to me like.
And that's all I'm seeking clarification.
It's at issue here.
Install is just not putting the final concrete or hard surface on.
Okay.
And one more point on this from our end, when we do get to this point, Chet, and it gets to the council, there's two different things going on here. There's a path that leads to a park system and trail, and then there's this, which is essentially a connection within the subdivision development to get pedestrian traffic from this side to this side. If you look at the preliminary plat, this is a very long block. So if you look at the length of the block, how long did we say this was? There's no connection in between. So normally you have another road coming up here. You see this road here with the Sage, Jeff?
Mhm.
That Sage would normally come down to Casey's Trail, and you'd be able to get through. You'd be able to walk directly through down to the area. So this is gonna probably get a higher used pedestrian connection, because you've got a road over here, and I think you'd have another road Chet somewhere down here, so if you're looking at priority, just from a pedestrian walking, anybody in the subdivision, this is probably a higher priority trail, or connection, side path at this point. But again, you're right, it is a development agreement issue.
I guess that's where my issue is here is, you know, as far as the plat is concerned, I feel like, you know, we can approve this and have done what's within our purview. In terms of the language of who's installing, who's doing whatever, that feels like it's maybe a step past what we have the authority to I guess.
We normally
dictate.
would not weigh in on that.
Yeah, typically it's not something we would weigh in on. I'm not trying to pass the buck to,
No,
you know,
but
the
it's
council and the development agreement or anything, but sure, you know, let's all get out of here and not argue.
So so you think you change the word install?
I guess I don't.
To something else, basically?
I get the intent here, is that the intent is that these paths are constructed at the time of public improvement construction. And I think we can leave something in here to ensure that that happens, sort of as a condition of, you know, construction of the public improvements, but maybe be silent to who's installing. I guess I don't know what the language necessarily would be to make sure that it gets done. That's a condition of our approval, which I think is the intent.
Right.
But leave it open-ended as to whatever they negotiate in the development agreement to make that happen.
Well, you're approving a plat that's got those easement areas already set up for the path. So in order to get that
eliminate it.
moving forward, it's a development agreement, so it's
We
a,
could just eliminate number 6 then.
so I think you can eliminate it.
So get rid of 6.
No, that doesn't mean that.
That's,
Yeah, it's
we're
still
done
on
with
this.
No.
With this discussion.
but we would be done with it.
Yeah.
You would.
Yeah.
But.
No, that makes sense
from
to
a
me.
plan
If
commission
that doesn't get
standpoint-
installed at the time of public improvement and construction, regardless of who pays for it, whether it's the developer or the city or whoever, whatever that agreement is, it would seem like that installation would not be in keeping with our approval if it was not done at the same time. So it would be a violation of what we're approving. So I would feel that we could approve this without 6
I would agree.
and be okay. Does that make sense, Darren? Are we?
Yeah, because it's the same, we got the roads, we got everything else on the plat
Okay.
that you're approving that has to be done as part of the development agreement, so
Okay.
yes.
Do we have any,
Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
do we have any other questions for the petitioner as long as he's up there? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Seeing none, back to the commission.
So is there a zoning code for the requirement of the construction of the trails?
Not for the trail.
No.
Not for the trail to the south. We'd have to look at the subdivision regs for that, for the length of a block. And I don't have the full preliminary plat here. We have a block length requirement, a maximum, that you have to have an intersection every so many 100 feet. And I think this block is extra long, and I think the reason why we want that connection on the north side going to Sage is because it's so long.
Okay, but it doesn't say it has to be asphalt, doesn't have to.
No, our subdivision regs need to be updated, and we're in the process of doing that right now. Next year we'll get it done. But I think it's kind of mum on on side paths like this. It does a good job of talking about where sidewalks should be and what they should be constructed of, but paths like this, it's not very strong on.
Okay.
Other thoughts? Go ahead, Kath.
Yeah, this is important, this trail.
It is.
And I don't want to see it passed over and then somehow it doesn't happen and the property owners, adjacent property owners plant grass and suddenly it's like their yard and it's not a trail. So I think it's got to be asphalt or hard surface or
Yeah.
gravel or something that, yes, this is a trail.
And there
Whoever
is-
pays for it. So this is, I think this is, Ed's probably right. It's not our decision to decide who does it, but in the end, if I were on the council, I would want to see that somebody does it. subdivision regs or not. I mean, it just.
John?
You're correct.
John and
There
then
is
Tom.
an item in the 5-year capital improvement plan for the Rouge Park development too, so it's not that far off. Granted, it doesn't say exactly what the money in the plan is gonna be used for. It's a large area. If it's gonna include the trail system down this far, or if it's gonna include improvements to the existing trail. But nevertheless, it is in the parks plan and in the capital improvement plan in the 5th year of the 5-year plan that we just approved recently, so.
Thomas?
I'm living in the subdivision that has no park or recreational space. There is actually allegedly a provision to have access to the wheel wash trail through one area, which is now underwater. Has not ever been kept up, has not ever been developed, and so the majority of the neighborhood goes through a vacant lot. And once those lots are developed, there will be no access to the only area that we have. And having said this, I totally agree with Kathy that it has to happen and be there and made ahead of time, or it will never happen, as evidenced in my subdivision.
That helps a lot.
I think there's a trail around that detention basin as well that.
That's supposed to be the one that's underwater.
Yeah.
All right, other? Yeah.
Yeah, question, how do we could talk like this, but how do we make sure that it will happen?
That's the development
If we
agreement.
take out, it'll be in the development agreement because the plan commission is asking that it be in the development agreement.
Well,
That's not part of
Only
it.
because it's platted.
It's the same, I mean, we're having kind of the same, you know, we're approving a plat with those two, with those provisions in them, but we also have a plat that has, that calls for the development of roads and sidewalk and sewer and water, and we don't put a spec, that's all covered through the development agreement. So,
Okay,
I think the staff's position thus far is that we want those things installed, and I think we're gonna have some.
Properly.
Yes, we're gonna have
Yeah,
some more
properly.
discussions
Okay.
at the development agreement level. Once we get to council, that's where the discussion will be whether that provision holds in the development agreement. I think they'll pick up on all the conversation that we're having
Okay.
right now on this particular issue. But I think Ed is right, you know, the proper tool and vehicle for that is the development agreement.
okay.
So we'd be looking to make a motion minus number 6.
That's what I was just gonna ask, do we need to amend or just?
I think you just make a
Okay, so
motion.
make the motion to accept with all recommendations other than number 6, including the number
And-
7 that you added,
Correct.
which will become the new
New
number
number
6.
6.
Yep.
Which you get
Just
to.
button it all up.
Okay, motion's on the floor.
Second.
All right, any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none, call the roll, please.
Carrie,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Hins,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried with amended conditions.
Item number 4, public hearing, zone change from single-family 9 district and institutional district to institutional district with a plan development overlay, general development plan, and specific implementation plan for an increased playground and community garden at 575 Monroe Street, 581 Monroe Street, and 532 Broad Street, commonly known as the Boys and Girls Club of Oshkosh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have, start with the land use map up here. Kind of in this green with the red building on it, you can see here is the existing Boys and Girls Club location. And then there are 2 previously residential lots kind of at the northeast corner here. The request at this time is to rezone the entire property. They will have to bring all of the 3 parcels under common ownership. Staff is recommending that can be done either through a CSM or a simple lot combination. But they will be bringing the 3 properties into a single parcel. And then in conjunction with that, they're looking to rezone those properties to institutional with a plan development overlay. So we have the existing Boys and Girls Club parcel, which kind of wrapped around up here, already zoned institutional. We then have 2 smaller parcels on the northeast side here that were previously residential structures, zoned SR9. So we'll be bringing those into the IPD district as well. So the precipice for this request is there's currently a playground here. The applicant would like to expand that playground onto these additional lots that they have acquired, along with a potential community garden on the southern lot. They would like to fence in that entire area similar to the fencing they have today. So the applicant has went before the Board of Appeals previously numerous times for a couple of outstanding issues related to fencing and some other items to the site. As staff sat down, talked to the owner, talked to the proposed project, we kind of agreed at this time, with the current climate of the Board of Appeals and the current laws that govern that, the best bet for this project is to move it into a planned development instead of continuing to seek variances, bring it into a one clean-cut site, and use the planned development to offset their needs, and as well as to make sure we still fit well within the neighborhood. So they're looking to do, unfortunately it didn't copy the greatest here. So they have an existing 5-foot chain link fence that goes around the property. So they're looking to extend that chain link fence around the new playground area. So this lot would be the increased playground area. Then they would like to do some additional fencing along this called a community garden area and a fence between the two. They would have a gate here at the corner to allow entry into the community garden. So they would require a couple of base standard modifications for that fence. Fences in a front yard are only allowed to be 4 feet in height, and chain link is not allowed in front of a building. Now, in this instance, we do not have a building, so it's all front yard, therefore chain link would not be permitted. The precedent has already been set by variants that were granted for this fence here. So that's why staff is comfortable continuing that cohesive style of fencing around the new development. They are proposing a 5-foot green space along the front of the property. So their current area does not have any greens, very minimal green space, we should say. So this new fence will be set back a little bit farther than the prior fence. Give us a little bit of buffer there. Going to be doing some flowering shrubbery along that property line. So it should improve the site, even though it is chain link fencing. They are then looking to do a fencing with privacy slats along this south property line. So this is the one portion of the request that the staff does have a little bit of concern with. When we have SR9 zoning adjacent to the institutional zoning, code calls for a 0.2% opacity buffer yard and an increased setback. So the applicant is looking to go down to about 5 feet instead of the 10-foot requirement. Staff is comfortable granting them that basically half reduction in setback, but in trade-off for that, staff feels that that fence and landscaping should be elevated to accommodate that it is closer to the property line and could have a greater impact on an existing residence to the south. So traditionally, a 0.2 buffer yard would be made up of either a 4-foot picket fence with 84 landscaping, or a 6-foot solid fence. Staff does want to continue to give a little bit of flexibility to the applicant, so we are suggesting kind of 2 options. That for a reduced setback, they either provide the 6-foot solid fence along with 70 points of landscaping, or if they wanted to continue with the 5-foot chain link slatted fence, that they provide 175 points of landscaping. So we're trying to give them a little bit of options. Would they rather use more intensive landscaping to screen it with a lesser fence, or a stronger fence and less landscaping? Because we do want to protect the residents immediately to the south of them. Outside of that, there are no other real proposed changes. So from a plan development perspective, there's no building elevations, lighting plans, stormwater plans to worry about through this request. It's simply a request to do some additional fencing to accommodate the larger playground and that community garden use. So there's a little bit closer up. So this is the area that staff was looking to have some increased fencing or landscaping just to buffer the house to the south. So here you can see the existing chain link fence kind of at the corner. This would be the similar style of what they would like to maintain around the new playground area. Just a couple more pictures. You can kind of see what's going on out there. So staff is recommending approval with a couple of conditions. Base standard modification to allow the 5-foot chain link fence along Monroe. Base standard modification to reduce the buffer yard from 10 feet to 5 feet along the south property line. And then one of the following landscape options. Either the applicant provide a 6-foot solid fence with 70 points of landscaping, or the applicant could choose to provide a 5-foot slatted fence with 175 points of landscaping. Staff would like the final landscaping fencing plan to be approved by community development. That's basically so we can double check to say that they have met the requirement above, and that the applicant either do a CSM or a lot combination to create the single parcel.
All right, thank you, sir. Technical questions? Go ahead, Thomas.
This is owned by the Boys and Girls Club. I don't have my sheet.
Yes. Other technical questions? Go
I
ahead, John.
just kind of want, I guess with it being a playground, and because I grew up going to Smith School, and we had like, I don't know, one of those 12-foot high fences or whatever around, but blocking off between residential. I was just wondering why we don't go higher on fencing between residential and the playground.
The playground
Because
would
I
be
know even with
one.
that higher fence stuff would get over and.
Yeah, so the playground actually stops here.
You did your baseball.
The playground stops here. The lot between them and the residence is the community garden.
Okay.
So there is a,
Okay.
It's a pretty long pass with a football.
50, 60 foot
Well, I'm thinking
separation.
tennis balls off the bat
Baseball,
or,
yeah.
that kind of thing. I was just curious.
Other technical questions? All right, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
Jamie Wilcox, Boys and Girls Club 5, 350 West 14th. Just to answer your question on the playground on the left side there where you see there's play equipment and a swing set. And then, I don't know, probably where you see the halfway to the road there on Monroe, right in there, that's a grassy area. So we purchased both those properties, and we've obviously tore down the houses now. We're going to keep the green space and create a bigger green space so the kids can throw that football a little bit so it's not going over the fence. And the reason why we went with a 5-foot fence there originally on the sidewalk side is to keep our kids safer. And then the reason why we want to move have a green space on the south side for the garden area is we noticed when we did that playground and when we had the addition of the teen center of our south side, we created an L-shaped playground which is very difficult to supervise, and so we want to square it off so our staff can see the whole playground at one time. We are going to keep a couple trees in there for shade for the summer as well. And then the garden, the green space for the garden is just to have a bigger space for our garden. Right now it's behind our building, and I think it'll be a nicer thing to get Grow Oshkosh to come in and help out with that as well with the kids. As far as the recommendations go, I'll have to work with you on that southern fence and what they got a driveway on that. It's a rental property right now. They got a driveway right next to it, so I think we really want to give them some space for snow removal and stuff. So we can work with you on that, on what we can give them for. I don't want to give them nothing. Be throwing snow on the fence, and that ain't going to be a good thing either. So
We can work with you to develop kind of that landscaping fencing plan to make sure we're.
yeah, we'll work with you on that. I have no problem with that. So any questions for me?
Okay, do we have any questions for Jamie? All right, thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Come on up, Mr. Pitt.
Bernie Pitts, 617 West Irving. First of all, I appreciate what the Boys and Girls Club does. I think they do a wonderful, wonderful job, except for I own the property directly across the street from it. The city downzoned the property I own, which is the 3 units, down to single family just a couple of years ago, saying that the area needed to be one family, single family residence. Therefore, I have a 3-unit property that can be used as single family unit. There are 6 doors and there are 2 doors to each one of the units. I have no objection to them making that into a playground, but I do object to them putting a community gardens there, because right on the corner of a Parkway in Monroe, the bus stops there, and it is continuously that people are dropping garbage there. Some of it comes from the people coming from the Boys Club, and I can't say it all does, but there is always garbage there that has to be picked up. And I think by putting a community gardens there is going to make that problem worse. I think that if you want to approve it for a playground, I'd be 100% in favor of it. But to put a community gardens there that there's going to be more trash on the terrace, I can't go along with it. I also feel as though when they did downzone the property in the area, I came to the zoning and planning, And they said, well, the whole area there should be single-family residence. Well, I kind of got bit by them doing that because I have a building that has three separate units in it. I hope you do approve it for their playground area, but I would be absolutely against them putting in community gardens there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to speak to this item today? Seeing none, back to the commission. Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, call the roll. Nina?
Perry,
Present.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Hint,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 701 with conditions.
On item number 5, public hearing, text amendments related to establishment of short-term rentals within section 3074 and 3078 of the zoning ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is the follow-up to last meeting's workshop where we discussed about the upcoming changes pertinent to the state law for short-term rentals. So staff is recommending a couple of changes in order to accommodate the new short-term rental ordinance that will be taking place within Chapter 8. So this is all kind of began through room tax and the new changes to room tax. In order to come in compliance with the state law, staff is recommending a couple things. First would be removal of what we currently define as a vacation rental home. As defined in our ordinance presently, it would be in violation of the state law. We then plan to replace that with a new permitted use called short-term rentals permitted within all zoning districts. The reason we're comfortable doing it in all zoning districts is the way it's narrowly defined is it requires a dwelling unit. So this would allow, by making it permitted in all district, it would allow anyone with a dwelling unit, whether it be a legal non-conforming dwelling unit in a zoning district that doesn't allow single-family homes, or a traditional single-family home, both of them, as long as they're legally a dwelling unit, this would be available to them. So we didn't want to preclude somebody that had a legal non-conforming dwelling unit just because the zoning district would not allow it. So that's why you see it permitted in all districts. Then going with that, we would be deleting the current vacation rental home regulations within the ordinance in section 3078 and replacing them with the new section for short-term rentals. So it's a residential dwelling unit that is offered for rent for a fee for fewer than 29 consecutive days as defined within the Wisconsin state statute. Regulations related to short-term rentals will be placed within municipal code, which is chapter 8-1.2. 8.1 is the room tax. Because this is part and parcel to the room tax changes, the actual regulations that govern short-term rentals will be found in that section. It'd be in the municipal code, as it's not necessarily a land use. It is something that is regulated separately. Per the request, because short-term rental is very narrowly defined, to try to help us understand when this applies, we've tried to do a little bit of a flow chart for you. So the first question is, do you rent for more than 29 consecutive days? If a home is rented for more than 29 consecutive days, it is not a short-term rental. So if you rent for less than 29 consecutive days, we start to ask a couple more questions. Do you rent for 11 days or more? If you are renting less than 11 days in a calendar year, so 10 or fewer, you would not need a short-term rental license. This ordinance would not apply to you. If you do rent for more than 11 days, do you rent for more than 180 within the year? If you rent for more than 180 within the year, you also do not qualify under the state statute as a short-term rental. If so, basically there is a one sweet spot as defined in the state code of where you're a short-term rental and you need a license. Oops. It is if you rent for 11 or more days throughout the year, but less than 180 total. If you kind of fall within those two.
And not 29 consecutive.
And not 29 consecutive. So this would be 11 or more days kind of spread out throughout the year. You need a short-term rental license as established by the ordinance.
Nice chart you got there, Mark.
You need that flow chart.
Complicated flow chart.
Did the mayor do this? No.
I'm just looking at the tax dollars, that's all.
Now, this, although we're doing this with the room tax ordinance update, room tax applies differently when you are required to pay from the short-term rental license. This is just the requirements of when you would need to go through the process and obtain a short-term rental license through the city.
All right.
That being said, we do recommend approval of it.
All right, thank you. That was pretty good.
In the packet, I did include for you a copy of the short-term rental ordinance that will be found within Chapter 8. The high-level overview of it, this is not a yes, no kind of approval process. It is an administrative process. State law outlines the things an applicant must provide to the municipality. You provide those things, you are approved for a short-term rental license. The precipice of the state law change was basically saying short-term rentals should be treated equally to bed and breakfast and hotels. The same standards should apply to everyone renting out property. Same room tax should apply, same health, wellness, safety regulations should apply. So the regulations that you find within the ordinance are similar to what a bed and breakfast or hotel would have to do.
Got it.
With the main exception being, this is allowed in all districts where there's a living unit.
Correct.
A bed and breakfast might not be allowed in all districts. A hotel might not be allowed in all districts. Because of the state preemption, anything that's a living unit qualifies.
All right, technical questions for city staff.
Do we have any idea how many people are this gonna affect?
It varies quite a bit. We did a check when we first started this process, just looking at like Airbnb, vacation rental by owner, and there were anywhere with some overlap, obviously, like 100 to 150 rooms within the city of Oshkosh listed on there. Now, some were only listed for obviously EAA and some of those larger events. Some were listed all year long.
Yeah.
So basically, we're doing this because state law was changed.
Yep, this is
to require this essentially.
Correct. State law basically came through saying you need to make sure everyone is paying room tax, including these people that are short-term rentals as narrowly defined as short-term rentals.
And you need to allow them.
And you need to allow them, and you cannot have an ordinance that does not allow them, that prohibits them. So our old vacation rental home definition required a conditional use. Under the state law change, we can't require conditional use.
Oh, okay. But you did say that health and safety?
Yep. So you'll see in the
provisions apply to like an Airbnb?
Correct. So they require now to kind of bring them in line with what a hotel or bed and breakfast would do. They are required to have an inspection and through the county health department and get a license through the health department.
Okay. Good.
All right, other technical questions? This is a public hearing, so is there anybody here from the public who'd like to speak to it? Okay, public hearing is closed. Back to the commission.
Move approval.
Second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, call the roll.
Harry,
Present.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Hint,
Aye.
Heber,
Aye.
Boytek.
Aye.
Motion carried 701.
Our final business item tonight is item number 6, a public hearing for proposed zoning ordinance amendment to create flood storage district within section 3156 of the floodplain overlay zoning district.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Steve, we're gonna need you in a minute.
He's right there.
Integral to this process. Basically what's going on is we're proposing, and tonight we're proposing to create a new zoning district, a floodplain zoning district called a flood storage district. We're not proposing to map it. The mapping's gonna happen next year, but right now we're creating a new district called a flood storage district. And why are we doing this? We're doing this because City of Oshkosh participates in the National Flood Insurance Program, and as part of that, we adopt these things called firm maps. Firm maps are what we look at when we look at if your property is in a floodplain, and that's whether you need to get flood insurance. As an aside to that, we adopt our floodplain maps, right, Jeff? Outside of that, and that becomes our regulatory maps. So we map, when we adopt our floodplain maps to match the firm maps, that's how we, from a zoning perspective, that's how we regulate things in the floodplain. As a lot of you have known over the years, we've had, and Steve will get into the background here, that Sawyer Creek watershed area has had some issues from a flooding perspective. And the last few years, the city spent a lot of money trying to improve that situation by creating, the James Road detention basins, dredging out Sawyer Creek in areas, doing some improvements to the bridges to open up the cross-sectional area to allow more water to go through those areas. As part of that, it's impacted the actual firm maps, the flood insurance rate maps. So it's essentially changed the boundaries. The conditions, for the most part, have gotten better in the particular area. In order for us to adopt the new floodplain maps to supplement or support what we've done over the last few years, we have to create something called a flood storage district. Right now, within our code, we have our floodplain. The original floodplain is divided into 3 districts. It's the floodway district. That's generally that area where water is just moving. When it floods, the water is moving along. There's the flood fringe district. That's, what is that, between the, is that the 100-year floodplain? That's the 100-year floodplain, isn't it? It's the area outside of the floodway, and then the general floodplain district. Now, in order to do what we're doing to preserve our efforts to create the new firm maps, we're creating something called a flood storage district. And a flood storage district is an area that's going to hold. Steve, is there anything technical you want to add on what a flood storage district is? It's basically an area. You can see the flood. You can see what we're proposing on the map. These are what we're calling. These are what we're going to come back and request be included as flood storage districts. It's that area where water it's not detained, is it technically detained?
Slowed? Detention, detained, retained, whatever word you want to, it's where water currently is accumulating and sitting during significant rain events at this point in time.
And what the flood storage district mapping will do is when we create the district, all these areas that are on red on the map, the base zoning doesn't really change. We're creating an overlay. We're creating an overlay on top of that zone, and what's happening is that we need the elevations essentially to stay the same in that area. So, if, say you come by and you put a pail of dirt onto that property, we've got to take a pail out somewhere else. So there's a zero-sum game. So the volume always stays the same in that area. You cannot take that volume away. So it keeps the water detained in that area. So basically, what we're proposing to do is add that, and we talked a little bit about it. A flood storage district is an area of the floodplain where storage of floodwaters is calculated to reduce flood storage discharge. And really, the biggest underlying development standards is you can't increase the volume of development in an area. If you add something somewhere else, you got to take it out somewhere else. Steve, anything else to add on top of that?
No, it's really key. The area is holding a certain volume, and based on the LiDAR data and the models, they are able to determine kind of what the storage volume is based at a storm interval in that 100-year storm. Okay, this is how much this particular area holds. You could shrink the square footage of the area if you dug it deeper, as long as you're staying above the groundwater table, or you could spread it out more if you wanted to make it shallower. You can do items within there, but you just have to maintain that volume of water being held back.
Okay. Now, I've included in your packet kind of FAQ from the DNR on what a flood storage, just for some background, what generally a flood storage district is. And basically what we're doing is right now we're not, as I said, we're not mapping what's on the map up there. We're going to come back and we're going to ask that we map that. But right now it's not getting mapped. We're setting we're proposing to create this new district so we can come back and do this mapping. This mapping will allow us to then adopt the updated firm maps.
And to kind of why we're at this point, I'll try to explain this. It's difficult. Try to bear with me here. If you have questions, please. But essentially, if we started if the body of water is here, and we started with the floodplain out here, and we constructed some items to move the floodplain back to this point. What FEMA is saying is, when we do the new modeling, we can't use any of this existing rural detention. So instead of the 100-year floodplain being here where it was at the start, they're saying the 100-year floodplain is now out here, and our improvements made it here. So we've got this gap. So all our improvements, when we do the floodplain, are actually to make the floodplain larger, even though we've done all this detention, without the ability to count the rural detention as part of that
So
floodplain.
here's a real life example for you. I live in the Sawyer Creek area. About 8 square feet of the corner of our lot is in a 100-year floodplain. My impression is with all these improvements, that map should be changed so that it's not in a floodplain anymore where we are because of all the stuff you've done downstream. Is that accurate? Like if you remap, would those maps, some maps would grow, some areas would grow, some would shrink? Or is that?
That would be the intent. However, under the new FEMA rules, your floodplain on your property would likely increase greatly because we can't use any of this rural detention. So the floodplains actually were generally growing everywhere.
Oh, that's good news. All right.
This should offset that.
What?
This should help offset that.
By doing this mapping and getting this rural detention.
Oh, got it.
Then we can count it so we can start.
That's what I'm
back at
saying.
this
That's what
baseline,
I'm saying.
yes.
Okay, because.
I think that's an important point that we need
Well,
to keep
because,
remembering to talk
well,
about.
just for the people that aren't here, if you own property and you want to do some things with the bank and there's a floodplain, even if it's just a teeny tiny corner, it affects, we never had to have flood insurance until we wanted to go to the bank for something else. Then all of a sudden we got to have flood insurance.
And just.
If this map changes where I am, then that may preclude the need for people like me to buy flood insurance.
And by and large, it is helping people. However, with the better topography information and everything else, there are
No question.
lots that were not in the floodplain that will be in the
Yes.
floodplain afterwards.
The map needs to be updated, period.
Yeah.
Okay, I get that.
So we're not approving any maps. We're just saying we're gonna have this district
We're
now.
creating this district we're intending on coming back next year and requesting to map the flood storage districts.
So those red areas could, like Tom was saying, could decrease, increase in different areas.
No, they might be the same or bigger, but, because this stuff is after the mapping that existed when we,
These red areas up here are based on current topography data.
Right.
And what the areas that are currently detaining water during events. So a lot of these, this is the wetland that's kind of out in front of, is it Continent?
Continental Gerbau.
There's a wetland pocket out here. These are a lot of the Southwest Industrial Park
Yeah.
detention basins that we have. This is,
these are human-made
a lot of the ones
areas,
Detention
basically.
basins in the
are
city.
detention basins. A lot of the ones that are out in the rural area, well, this is James Road Detention Basin. A lot of these ones that are out in the rural areas are either areas that are created just by low spots, and then actually generally the culverts underneath the roadways are restricting some of the flow, so they're retaining it in addition to being those low spots.
So we're gonna see a different map? Or is this it?
No, this will be, when we come back, and we're gonna show you the entire FEMA map, but this is just showing you where the proposed flood storage districts will be mapped. Based on all the information that we've done, based on everything that, we worked with a consultant to come up with this, this is what will come back and
So-
propose to map. And it'll be a two-pronged thing. The city will map the things within, or request the city to map inside the city, and then we have to go to Winnebago County to ask for those areas outside of the city to be mapped.
So do you feel that it's enough area for change in rainfall rates? So if we're seeing a 10-year, 24-hour event, it's no longer a 10-year, 24-hour event, and we're seeing it increase in.
This is not taking any of that, this is taking into what is considered the current 100-year
Right.
rainfall event, and that's what FEMA is requiring. We've gone back and forth about all sorts of different, and FEMA has said this is the
This is
rainfall
it.
distribution you will use.
You have no choice,
Yes, we've argued that many times.
because it's changing, so.
Steve, go over there with it, Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay.
Other questions for our friends here?
But this can be, once, if you need to change it down the road, that can happen, yeah.
Again, a FEMA update to the mapping, yes.
If
we
they
would have to
actually
go through-
decide to,
If all of a sudden the rainfalls change and the city wants to go through and work on actually, I think we would just have to work with Winnebago County at that point in time to amend the flood storage districts. We wouldn't necessarily have to go through FEMA because FEMA's not approving these. They're just requiring that they be in place in order for us to
Adopt the new maps.
adopt the new maps.
based on 100-year.
Based on the current 100 year.
That's what we're working on. Other questions or thoughts for our friends here?
Kind of complicated.
Okay, this is a public hearing, and anybody in the public want to speak to this item today, Mr. Pitt?
Ernie Pitt, 617 West Irving. I own some land along Sawyer Creek. I made 2 trips to the city hall to find out what they were going to do. I went to the zoning and planning office first, and nobody was there, knew anything about it. So then last week I went again. They told me they didn't have no maps. They didn't know what was going on. I had to go upstairs and talk to the engineering office. Nobody in the engineering office knew anything about it. So I went back down to the zoning and planning office, and they had no maps whatsoever. I think before you go mapping something, improving mapping something, the general public that owns the land alongside of it should know what you plan on doing. And that has not been provided by the city. I think that this is the horse before the court, behind it. You got 2 different legal notices in the paper, and one of them says you should go to the zoning and planning office, and even just contact Jeff Noel. He knows nothing about it. I just don't get what's going on. I think that if you're going to take and change what my property is, I should have notice ahead of time what you're going to do to it. And I think that this should be laid over until you can provide the maps that we can see instead of saying they don't have them.
Thank
You
you.
got any questions?
Doesn't look like it. Right. Thank you, Mr. Pitt. Anyone else here to speak to this? Okay, back to the commission. Public comment is now closed. Kath?
I just want to say it's been pointed out that we're creating the concept of flood storage district.
Right.
And we are not today doing this map. But I would agree with Mr. Pitts that when we do map something, that we will have enough information for adjacent property owners.
Correct. We're already proposed, we originally had a meeting set up, we were gonna notify all the property owners. That meeting had to get canceled because there's some staffing issues. We're gonna redo that meeting sometime late January, February, to have a separate meeting with all the affected property owners, both county and city, out at the Coughlin Center. We've not named that date yet, but once we name it, we'll be sending notices out a couple weeks at a time.
Okay,
So
great.
that process is set up before it actually will come to you for any type of approvals.
Okay, good, thank you.
Other thoughts or comments?
Move approval.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Do we have to? It's a public hearing, isn't it?
You close the public hearing.
Yep. All right, let's take the call roll here.
Terry?
Aye.
Mott?
Aye.
Carl?
Aye.
Bowen?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Hint?
Aye.
Kiefer?
Aye.
Wojtek?
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
All right, someone had a comment about previous item?
Well, yeah, just, I think at the first meeting in January?
Tentatively.
15th?
Oh, yeah.
Tentatively.
The only meeting in
Which
January.
happens to be New
Which is,
Year's
yeah,
Day.
the only meeting, the council,
15th?
uh,
January 15th.
We referred back Lawrence to the Plan Commission for further discussion. Apparently Lauren did read the staff report. He didn't show up at any of the meetings. He's now read the staff report. I think he's having some issues with some of the things that we've said, or some of the conditions that we've placed on there. It was enough that the council felt that we should probably refer it back and have Mr. Rangeloff actually show up and have a discussion with us. And so expect to see that in January. Hopefully.
Excuse me, because I was at the
Bold
last city
move,
council meeting.
council.
The attorneys
Bold
left
move.
before.
What was that? No.
Who has the concerns?
Lauren's attorney.
Oh, so we're talking about, okay,
Yeah,
I'm thinking of
yes,
something else, okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
so
I think I'm busy that night.
it's coming back.
Would you
No.
clarify the city attorney requested the council to send it back to Plan Commission?
Well, that was part of, that was the request, that not from the city attorney so much, but from Mr. Rangeloff's, his attorney.
Still an eyesore.
Might I ask what the Plan Commission is doing with our first meeting in January?
The 15th.
The
First
15th is the
meeting
one
in
and
January
only.
is the 15th.
You'll be watching football like me.
You do not have to come here on New Year's Eve.
Motion, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Merry Christmas to you and your
Yes,
family.
Merry